You like nerding out about guitar pedals, this video is right up your alley. Hey everybody, I'm Resident Loser Jeremy, this is Recording Studio Loser. Welcome back to another video. This is one where I have Jonah back on and we're talking about a much larger, more versatile, more impressive pedal board. I love these videos where we're just kind of talking gear. I love playing guitar. It's what I started doing first. But admittedly, I never knew much about. I was mainly playing heavy music like in the late 90s, early 2000s, and wasn't a ton out there for that scene. Now the world of pedals is almost too overwhelming to navigate for me. I wanted to sit down with Jonah and have him walk me through kind of his thought process and how he puts together a pedal board. Not that I think we should recreate his pedal board necessarily, but learning how someone in his position with the amount of different things that he does with that pedal board, how they approach and think about what goes on that board. What jobs are they doing? What can those pedals do for him to bring out a certain aspect that he needs to come from that pedal board? If you dig these videos, hit the like button. There is no sponsor here. This is just us nerding out about gear. This is one you can turn on the background and listen to if you want. I will say, this was my first time recording a few of these videos and the audio isn't awesome. I'm not super happy with it, but I didn't want to lose the hours of conversation that we had. There is a little bit of amp noise when we're speaking. I apologize for that. In the future, I will do better. We're not trying to recreate his specific pedal board here, but if you are curious about the pieces that he's talking about, I will link them down below. But let me know if you guys like this style. There are more of these coming. There's a bass pedal board video coming, so stay tuned for that. Real quick, let's get right into it with Jonah. Oh no, where's my coffee? It's over there, hang.
I love the Stein.
Right.
Is it beer? Is it coffee? The whole blend.
You don't know what time it is. Holy cow.
Pedals.
Pedals.
And we're back.
Resident Loser Jeremy, Jonah, Air Wiggler Extraordinaire. We are back with a much larger, more expensive pedal board.
Yep.
So our first one, if you missed it, building like a smaller...
Like a working man's pedal board.
A working man's pedal board. Go check that one out.
The Ford F-150 of pedal board.
$80,000 truck. Describe this board. What is this? Who is this for?
I put this pedal board together with the idea that I'm simultaneously making records and tracking in the studio, but also playing live and needing a bunch of different sounds on the fly. And it's really just a collection of my favorite pedals. They all happen to like have colors that work with each other, but really it's just the pedals that I really seem to vibe with and connect with. Just put them on a pedal board and call it a day.
Well, first, let's describe what you do. So you're probably doing some things that if we talk about it would seem contrary to one another. Like you're making records of all different kinds, pretty heavy, at least of the ones I've had a small hand in. You are not shy about tone, whether it's guitar or bass. You're a killer bass player. But I think the thing that would throw a lot of people for a loop is most of time we're playing live, if it's not with the band, is playing in a church context.
Yeah.
CCM stuff, which gets a bad rap.
Yeah, and unnecessarily so. Like, there are some killer musicians and lots of really good talent in that scene. It can get a little samey, but I don't think that's always a bad thing. You know, it can become...
The tone, especially, is... I don't know what... People think they would know what... Like, it's boring, it's run-of-the-mill, but like, I've heard you play. I've mixed broadcasts when you're playing guitar, and you're not shy.
Definitely a good way to put it. No, I mean... I picked pedals that I feel like have a lot of good sounds in them, but aren't overwhelming with options. Because I definitely get option paralysis at times, especially if I'm sitting with like a modeler or plugins that have 1,000 different amps and 800 different overdrive models, and that kind of thing is exhausting for me mentally. And so I just wanted to pick some pedals that really seem to have an array of good sounds, but aren't necessarily overwhelming with their workflow. So like I've definitely run the gamut of like delay and reverb pedals a ton. I settled on the GFI stuff because I feel like it's really user-friendly but also doesn't overwhelm you. Same with the Chase Bliss Preamp. A lot of options, but they're all generally in the same, same town.
Run it down. What's your thought process? Why these pedals? I'm particularly intrigued with the Benson.
I try and pick pedals that have a lot of dynamic range, meaning it's responsive to my playing dynamics, and it's accenting my playing, not necessarily the other way around. Because there definitely are sounds out there that, at least for me, make me play in a different way. Like when I plug into 5150, if I'm not in drop D, I'm very quickly about to be in drop D. Just the tone and the sound impacts, for me, a lot of how I play. And so I tried to pick pedals that seem to be closer to an extension of how I play, where I can turn it on and it feels musical, not like I just turned a pedal on. I don't want, when I'm listening back to myself, to hear myself thinking about pedals. So I'll do a quick rundown. So first thing in the chain is the Chase Bliss Preamp Mark II, made in collaboration with Benson Amps. It is a killer, like capital K killer, overdrive, fuzz, distortion, preamp, and it's got presets. It's a super cool pedal. I really didn't want to get one, and I didn't want to like it, but I couldn't sleep at night, and so I bought one. You know, my bank account cried, but it sounds so good that I can live with it. So yeah, I'll turn like any reverb off, and we'll just go quick sounds of that. So it's got, the way I've dialed it in, for each guitar, I have 3 that I play mainly. I've got 3 different banks of sounds. So you can see there the little LED indicates what bank I'm on. For the Glory, I'm on the red bank. I'm just kind of contoured to make sure that the guitar is hitting the pedal and the amp in a way that makes sense. Because this guitar doesn't have a whole ton of low end on it. My Duesenberg has a ton of low end, and so I've kind of shaped how it hits the amp. So here's just transparent overdrive, a little bit of a boost.
Jump. What is that?
Yeah, so it allows you to jump to a set preset if you want. So It's got off, 0, 5. And I use this to limit myself to only like 3 to 5 sounds per bank. It means you've got 30 total patches. I don't need 10 sounds per guitar. So what I have it set is at 3, which is my highest gain sound, as you can hear. It'll jump back to preset 0. If I turn it off, it'll go all the way up to however many I got it set. And that's so live, I don't have to click on this 1,000 times to get back to my transparent drive sound.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I really, for this, I'm using 2 or 3 sounds live, each contoured to the guitar, if that makes sense.
Just that whole pedal intrigues me, because it seems like, why would you want flying faders on something you control with your foot?
I know, but it's surprisingly like durable, and I've got the little lid for it.
Yeah.
Which for me, if anything, just putting it in the case and like in the gig bag for my pedal board, peace of mind there. But no, the faders are really responsive, and there's a lot of range. So.
Holy cow. I love that the EQ's not changing when you do that.
Right? And then same thing with, you know. It's pretty fun. And you can get really intricate with where you're scooping out the mid-range, because you've got a couple different mid options.
And that's just a cue for the mids.
Yeah, and you can put it before or after the gain stage as well. So if you want to like make it more saturated in the mids, you can do that.
So then you're creating different overdrive pedals.
Exactly. Yeah, that pedal show did a great video where they took this and like a King of Tone, a Klon, Fuzz Face, and did their best to capture those sounds in here. And I kind of use a couple of those settings. So 0 is my transparent drive boost. It's not always on, but generally it's on probably 60% of the time. 1 is like my take on like a Klon kind of boost, where it's definitely breaking up quite a bit, but it's pushing the amp harder as well. Amp. What's cool is it's still responsive and like can get clean if I just play something.
I really like how because you've mentioned that a couple of times, like the touch sensitivity of a lot of these things. You've put a lot of thought into that part of it.
Oh, for sure. Coolest lessons I learned on guitar was a buddy of mine said like a lot of guitar players think of it like a keyboard and like listen to these records and hear the guitar players thinking like a MIDI keyboard, where you really only got a couple different levels of velocity.
Everything's 127 all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to get a tattoo that says like always 127. I think it'd be really funny. But when I'm coaching drummers, sometimes I'll be like, "Can you just hit the snare 127 every time?" But with guitar, there's so much nuance and so much dynamic range that can be had that I feel like is missed out sometimes, especially in the pop scene. The more modern stuff gets and the more loud stuff gets, that's a sentence. Words are funny. I feel like that nuance can get lost, and so I try to keep myself in that thought process of like, how can I accent my playing with nuance? Chase Bliss preamp, super cool. Only other sound I'll show is my like really big lead distorted sound. And that's the setting the guys at that pedal show made up to sound like a King of Tone. Except I had some low end back. It felt like it was a little thin. But yeah, nice and big and raunchy. And as you can see, I'm scooping out some mid-range.
Yeah.
In the low mids.
So it's like middle 0 on that?
Yeah. Yeah,
so
middle
then you're
0.
boosting or cutting.
Yeah, and this, it's from like 180 all the way up to like 5 or 6K.
Okay.
So you can yeah, and the cool thing is as well, you can get this with a expression pedal and act like a wah-wah. Making it really funny really quick. We've got the Mythos Golden Fleece AU. We talked about it in the last video. It's a great little fuzz. Really responsive.
Touch sensitive.
Yeah, lots of breakup on tap. But I mean, this past weekend when I played at church, I turned it on and I did not turn it off the whole service. Read my volume knob. That was it. Like, that and a slapback.
Well, I played this weekend too at a different campus.
Yeah.
It was a heavy hitting set.
Oh yeah.
That was fun. And we got a guitar solo.
So yeah, it's a ton of fun. I love this fuzz. I go a little more in depth with it in the last video. Moving on from there, we've got these pedals up top. So I've got the Walrus Julia. It's a really great chorus, and chorus is a cool effect. Just to add a little bit different flavor, different texture. Makes my brain go into like indie pop mode.
Always had it in my head that I hate chorus.
Yeah.
And it took another guitar player I hire here at the studio all the time has this same pedal, and I never wanted him to turn it on. And he's slowly turned me around, but I don't know why chorus is so polarizing for me.
Yeah. Well, to me, it's like, and this is a really funny analogy. It's like someone who wears a lot of bright colors all the time. I have a friend, and she wears a lot of pink all the time. It's definitely a thing. And that's like her. Chorus to me is the same kind of thing. You turn it on and it's different. It's a statement. It's a little bold. And especially something like the Julia, where it can get nuanced and like not super affected, but I like to use it in a way that's pretty wild. So this is kind of where it lives at as my generic chorus. So for like generic 80s sounding-ish chorus kind of thing. But one thing I like to do as well is you can turn it closer to a vibrato and just get these really cool big warbly, and especially for more weird ambient stuff, I like to throw that in as a texture. So I'll kind of show off. So this is like really big and yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. Okay. You just have
my secret's out.
So wait. So you had bag and then bag.
And big, yeah. And it's basically just the same sound with the mix and decay turned up. Yeah, so I like chorus a lot, and I have a couple different chorus pedals that I like to use. The Julia stays on my board because it's durable and sounds good. We've got the Arion chorus. Have you heard of that whole thing?
Mm-mm.
So there's this old Arion chorus, comes in a little plastic box. It's like really poorly constructed, but it sounds awesome. And the guys at Vertex Effects were modding them with better foot switches, true bypass switching, and they're killer. It's like the Michael Landau kind of rotary chorus effect, and I should have brought it with, but it's super cool. That's definitely a more out there sound. It's closer to like a Leslie rotary thing, which isn't necessarily how I love to use chorus, especially for like pop or worship stuff. I want it to sound more like what I just showed off, but it's super cool. Man, I should have brought it with me because it looks cool as well. Yeah, moving on from chorus, from there I go into the Jackson Audio Prism, which is just such a killer boost, preamp, drive. It can do so much. It's my desert island pedal. Like if there was, you throw me the Prism for sure. With a good amp and a good guitar, but you know, put me on a desert island with that, and I could probably make a record with it.
Now I've seen this because there was a player that I like who used it.
Yeah,
but I don't know much about it. So you have color, amp, drop.
Yeah, so it's got
transistors?
Yeah, so 3 different gain levels. So before it's hitting the tone stack, all that, it can do some clipping inside of the pedal. So it can be a clean boost or a dirty boost. And then you've got different tonal options. So transparent, completely flat, no EQ. And
transparent.
Yeah, transparent. Amp is doing a little contour to the low end and top end. I think it's supposed to be based off of like an AC from an EQ perspective, but it's not really affecting the breakup. And then color, which is like a treble boost kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I typically like to use it with both these switches in the middle, and then pushing a little bit out high end and low end. One thing I love about it as well, and this is not like, we're not paid by Jackson to say it, but it's so usable. No matter where the knobs are.
None of this is sponsored, but...
Yeah, here's just the amp again. And then, yeah, the color changes.
That's really handy because you could look down and easily see where you're at.
Yep. Oh, I love it. And it's really responsive. Same thing. Like, it doesn't hinder my playing at all, which is huge. So yeah, after those, then we split into stereo, and that's where it gets kind of weird. So we go from there into the Strymon Volante. And it's a really great tape echo machine. Really similar to like the big Roland 201 Space Echo. Strymon's kind of take on that concept. So I use it in a couple different ways. These two pedals are controlled with MIDI. So I have different presets that I can call up on command.
Like this one and these two?
Just this one and this one. So
okay.
my delays are all from MIDI.
Got it.
I leave my reverb out of that.
Okay.
I'm not super heavy into MIDI yet. This is my first foray into the world of having presets on my pedalboard.
Got it.
So baby steps. But yeah, so I'll show off a couple of the sounds I really like. So this is like a really wide ping-ponging delay, which we're hearing in mono, but it's going back and forth.
You will hear it in stereo.
Yeah, and it's just a really good sounding tape delay. You know, it can get kind of nasty and dirty sounding. It can be really clean and pretty. I like to use a little nastier. It's kind of distorting a little bit, right?
Oh, it takes me back to 2003.
Right. Dude, I feel that. Yeah, and it just sounds really great. So a lot of my stereo delay stuff is coming from these two in combination. So for like my slapback, this is a really big hard panned slap, but this is going to be more of a dual delay that's really quick with some spring reverb.
This is both of these going?
This is just the voice.
This is just this.
Yeah, so I'll turn this on now.
Dude, that's killer.
Yeah, and I used a lot of slapback and that like dual delay concept. Those are really the two biggest delay sounds.
I'm really intrigued by this whole thing you got going on.
Yeah, so yeah, out of Volante, go into the Flint, which super awesome reverb and trim, and I'll kind of show that off in a sec. And then from there we go into my reverb pedal, which is Specular Tempest, and then I go out of that into a delay, which is also Specular Tempest. And for a while I was...
So is from here to here to here, then to
correct,
here.
yeah. So I go delay, reverb, delay.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I wasn't hot on it for a while. Like, I thought you had to go delay reverb.
Right.
But then I messed around with having one of both, and I loved it. Like, having the option to have everything go through reverb is great.
Yeah.
But also, you can get a lot of clarity out of your delays by putting them after your reverb. And I guess it really
doesn't
depends.
get too smeary?
No, that's the funny thing. I don't think it does.
Interesting.
Like, you have to adjust kind of how you play to it and the mix levels of your delay. But I feel like it makes it wider, because instead of having the reverb be the last thing, you're having hard pan delays being the last thing in your
Yeah.
And if that's what you're going for, like you want big stereo width, it's a cool thing to try. Like, it really depends on how you play.
Well, that's an interesting way to think about it.
Yeah. And the cool thing is, with the way these are built, I can just flash. Like, I can swap them without having to actually move them. I just plug them in, and I can flash them with if I want now this one to be my delays and that one my reverbs.
What is it with the like a flash drive or a?
Just plug it in with USB.
Oh, come on.
I know. They're killer, and they sound great. I had Timeline for a while, and I loved it, but over COVID, I just flipped pedals like a maniac, and arrived here. But, so yeah, I love that. So here's kind of some sounds that I'll go for on a regular basis. So this would be like big delay, with some reverb, some drive. Dude, right? I mean, I totally would. But the thing I'm always going for is I want my guitar to still sound like a guitar. So even at the biggest, most washy settings that I'll use, I still want it to be present.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that kind of informs how I dial in my reverb and delays, which is really the big part of it, to keeping your guitar sound like a guitar. So yeah, I'll just kind of mess around a little bit. If you want to turn some knobs, you can, but...
Well, talk about the Flint a little more, because I have had so many players come in with these, and I know I adore the sound of it, but I haven't messed with it much, and I don't know a whole lot about the idea behind this thing, but I've seen it used like 8 different ways, 8 different times. Oh, totally. Well, it's just a really great trim and a reverb pedal. So you've got a couple different tremolo options, a couple different reverb options. I typically like to leave it on the plate, which is the middle. So 60s is a spring, 70s is a plate, 80s is like a stadium hall kind of deal. And this is typically where I have it set up. So you're getting a good amount of splash there. And that's just this? Yeah, that's just that. Wow. But it never gets in the way of your guitar. Oh, wow. Yeah. Even with a crazy decay, it's... Oh, that's dope. I love that. Color would be like... Is the color the tail? It's like a tone knob. For the reverb. Okay. Ah. That's killer. Yeah, I love it. And the trim is also super cool. That sounds just like my Fender. Yeah. The Vibra King. Yeah. Or Vibra Lux. I don't know what I have. Think of a Vibra King? Is that a LED diode? I think so, yeah. Ha! That's dope. Yeah. And I'll typically, I'll leave it on a lot, so I'll set it right around here, so it's kind of subtle. Interesting. Yeah, that's cool. I like that a lot. Man. Yeah, so there's a lot of sounds here. But it's all really built with the idea that, man, those trails are still going. I know. It's accenting my playing, and it's just an extension of the guitar, which is, I think, an extension of the body. So, this is definitely the most it's stayed the same, the longest I've had a pedal board that hasn't really changed around a ton. Mm-hmm. The only things I'll swap out will be this slot. Sometimes I'll put the 1981 or the 385, depending on kind of the band format. If I'm playing with a bass player who uses more overdrive,
and I like to change what drives I use.
In that instance, would you clean it up or get dirty to meet?
I would probably just cut a little more bottom end out. It really depends on the vibe and the genre, but generally, I'll when I'm playing by myself as the only guitar player with like a clean bass player, there's a little more room to wiggle around on fuzz pedals seem to work better for me where it's not getting lost. But as soon as the bass player dirties up a little bit, and if you have a second guitar player, the amount of the frequency bandwidth you exist in kind of shrinks. And so the 1981 is super focused. TSs are pretty focused. I have a Walrus Voyager, which is like a Klon that I'll use as well. But it really depends on what the other guitar player is also playing. Like Steven, the other guitar player I play with a lot, he'll typically play either a Strat or his Duesenberg, and then whatever he's playing, I'll play the opposite of. So if he's playing a Strat, I'll pick a humbucker guitar like this or my Duesenberg. If he's playing his Duesenberg, I'll pick up my Strat or like a Telly or something like that, so that it's varied. And we'll switch around drives as well, just so it's not the same guitar, but being played twice. You know, especially live, I like to have a little bit of a difference there. But yeah, and the one thing I didn't touch on was this is the Morningstar MC8. I use it in a couple different ways. So this is just the main pedalboard menu where I've got my different delay presets built in. So I've got my big delay, which is that hard pan dual delay, slapback, a granular thing, which is like an octave-y kind of.
And this is just controlling this stuff, right?
So the granular delay is coming from the Specular Tempest, with this being used as a quarter note and eighth note delay just for some width. So it can get pretty fun real quick.
So you've built yourself a palette of options, and this is like
the brain. It controls lots of things.
The easy button for everything, because that would be a pain to dig through and change all that stuff.
Oh, and I'm not super coordinated, so if I have to tap this and then this and then this and tap in the tempo, man, I'm gonna fall over. There's a decent chance, you'll see me laying down on stage. And the other thing I use this for as well is I music direct a lot, so I'll be talking at the band with the talkback mic, firing Ableton and our tracks, clicks and cues, and so I actually use this for that as well. So this is that'd have been August 27th, 28th. I've got the song set to fire from Ableton, and then it also sends tempos to the delays as well. And if it's a little more in-depth, here's a transport that I built so I can do, 7 different locations in Ableton. So I've got the 3 songs, an underscore, a pre-service loop, and then I can turn the click on and off, and then stop and start for Ableton.
Oh, wow.
And it sends out tempo to my pedals, and then I can switch back and use my delay sounds like that.
Oh, that's killer.
Yeah. And I wanted to find something that I could use for controlling tempos and presets, but also not be off to the side for firing Ableton. Because for a while I was using a similar controller that would live off to the side of the pedal board, and if it got moved a little bit, it would hate me. And so this stays stable and works really well. And it's easy to program. I'm definitely not super in the MIDI world, but the editor for it is great and made it really easy to get some sounds that I like.
Killer.
Yeah.
So something that looks intimidating, really just the product of trial and error. You built something that's flexible, that works for you, but the principles are pretty standard from what we hear, how you build a pedal board. Other than this, delay into verb, into delay, into verb, which I dig and I really want to try.
Yeah. Well, and it's really just how I think.
Yeah.
One other thing I'll touch on that is arguably the most important is the cables you use. So I built all my own patch cables, but this is my soapbox moment. I care way too much about this. I don't want to notice that my pedal board's there when I'm plugged in. So oftentimes you'll see on forums and people talking about the magic of just plugging a guitar straight into an amp. There's not a ton of magic there other than pedals and cables that just kind of suck tone and suck some top end and response out. And the biggest difference I noticed in my tone, because I had a very similar configuration, but with a bunch of solderless patch cables. And as soon as I switched, these are all Mogami 2319 with Switchcraft, or not Switchcraft, Square Plug SP5 and SP500 plugs. was the top end opened up and I forgot that my pedal board was there. Like, the response was back, the feel of the amp was there. I didn't feel like anything was being, like, pushed too hard. Because one thing I was encountering a ton was if I wasn't running a buffer, I'd get, like, the top end would get kind of swampy and slower.
Yep.
Like, the relationship of the linearity of my pedals seemed to be changing. But with these cables, and I've kind of cut them to length, they're a little messy, I don't really notice that it's there. The only buffer I run out of, or my tuner is right before my volume pedal, and I've got that set as a buffer, but that's after my fuzzes and drives, and that's just because with however many, inches of cable I've got, I want to make sure it's being driven well. But it sounds great, like plugging straight into the amp. It's still great, still fun, but 80% of the time I am running my pedal board, and so I want it to sound as good as possible. And for power, I'm running the True Tone CS12 and a Voodoo Labs underneath there that are powering all this stuff. But yeah, it's pretty much.
And once again, you soldered those.
Yeah.
So once again, a situation where knowing how to solder, and it's not hard, like the cheapest tool you could possibly buy yourself. That will save you the most money. I mean, if you went and bought these, those would be expensive.
Oh yeah, I mean, I spent about $200 on a bunch of plugs and a massive amount of cable, and I still have like 80% of that cable left. The plugs are the expensive part. And if I can do it, anyone can, because I live in a tiny one-bed apartment with my wife. I don't have like a workspace or anything, so like legit, my monitors are set up on either side of the TV, and I mix there sometimes. But I did it on our stove. I just took a big baking pan, said, honey, I'm going to be in here for a couple hours, and knocked out 40 cables or whatever for all my pedal boards, with a $10 Harbor Freight soldering iron.
Yeah, and you don't need a super nice soldering iron, and you can build your own stuff, build your own cables, save a ton of money, buy a nicer pedal.
Well, and they're super durable. I think Joey Landreth said, or it was either him or the guy from Vertex. He was like, friends don't let friends go solder. Because solderless patch cables are really convenient, and especially if you're just using one or two of them, they can be okay. But, I'm moving this around a lot, and dust gets in there, and I've had patch cables die at the worst moments. And so far with these, I haven't had that. Like, once I get them tested and, all worked in, they're solid.
Well, that's killer, man.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for showing this.
Oh, yeah. There we go.
And I think we're gonna screw around with some bass stuff next.
Oh, yeah.
Stick around for that. We have a couple more videos coming up, so if you dig this, subscribe if you want more stuff like this. Let me know if you want Jonah back again. I think we're gonna film a couple more.
Yeah. And if you don't, that's okay. Just don't tell me.
And if you want to know what amp we've been using this whole time, we will describe that in another video.
Yeah.
But now let's set up some bass stuff.
Oh yeah.
We'll see you in the next one. If you made it all the way, thank you so much. I have put links to all the pedals that at least I could find in the description below. Subscribe if you like this stuff. Like it. Let me know if you dig this kind of a video. I'm Resident Loser Jeremy. I'll see you in the next one.